You are listening to the Daily Treasure Podcast produced by Mark Inc. Ministries. This is a daily devotional, and we are continuing in our series called Treasures of Faith. Today's devotional is called The Sign of God's Promise, and today's treasure is from Genesis 9, verses 12 through 16. And God said, "This is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you. A covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth, and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all living creatures of every kind. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all living creatures of every kind on the earth." The story of Noah is a story of God's grace. God sent the flood because he saw how great man's wickedness on the earth had become, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil all the time. Genesis 6:5. Yet in mercy he went on to promise that never again will I curse the ground because of man, even though every inclination of his heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures, as I have done. Genesis 8:21. And he sealed this promise with a bright and beautiful symbol of his grace, as we have just read in today's treasure, Genesis 9:12 through 16. The rainbow still reminds us of God's presence. How appropriate it is that when Jesus takes us to heaven, the rainbow of God, whatever that might actually be, will proclaim that he was faithful to all the promises he has ever made, as we read in Revelation 4:2 through 3. At once I was in the Spirit, and there before me was a throne in heaven with someone sitting on it, and the one who sat there had the appearance of jasper and cornelian. A rainbow resembling an emerald encircled the throne. God's grace is woven throughout Noah's story. God knew many of Noah's descendants would eventually choose sin over loyalty to their Creator. Not long after God saved Noah and his family, we see that even Noah himself succumbs to drunkenness and disgrace, as we read in Genesis 9, verses 20 through 21. His descendants later declared the rebellion against God when they brazenly proclaimed, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves." Genesis 11:4. Faithful to his promise to Noah, God did not destroy these arrogant people. Instead, he confused their languages and scattered them over the face of the whole earth. God gave Enoch and Noah a true and lasting saving faith. This faith was not inherent in them, but a gift of God placed in their hearts that had been prepared by the Spirit of God and made ready to receive his word, as we read in Ephesians 2:8 through 9 and 2 Timothy 1:9, chapter 3, verse 15, and Romans 10:17. God's promise to preserve the earth energized their obedience. Their lives, lived out in the context of corrupt cultures, provided encouragement to the Hebrew Christians that they should rest assured God would preserve and sustain them despite their difficult circumstances. And they knew as well that God's promise would hold true in life or in death. Friends, like the Hebrew Christians, we too must remain confident of God's promises as we develop a worldview that emphasizes the coming of Christ, as we read in Revelation 22, verses 7 and 12. That we make the most of every opportunity, as we read in Ephesians 5:16. That we focus on what is important and resist pettiness, as we read in Proverbs 15:16. That we live at peace with others, especially fellow believers, as we read in Hebrews 12:14. That we encourage those who lead us, as we read in Galatians 6:6. That we strive to live in holiness, as we read in Romans 12:1 through 2 and Hebrews 12:14. That we serve others through mercy ministries, as we read in Matthew 25:34 through 40. That we live every day in submission to his will, as we read in Luke 22, verse 42. That we experience the richness of his grace, as we read in 1 Corinthians 10:13, and that we passionately share the good news of Jesus, as we read in Matthew 28, verses 18 through 20. You may be thinking, but I'm just one person. The needs around me are too great. I don't have the energy or the courage it takes to live such a life. And you would be right. You most certainly cannot do this in your own strength, but God can do it in you. God promises in Philippians 2:13 to give you the strength and the understanding to live a life that pleases Him. Instead of allowing the enormous needs of our world to overcome you, concentrate on the here and now, the situations right in front of you. God may not call you to build an ark or to preach in a foreign land, but He does call you to obedience in this moment. He calls you to walk with Him as they did. And you only need to do that 1 minute at a time. You walk with God when you obey Him, whether in the mundane tasks or in the magnificent opportunities that God provides. You walk with God by the way you act while you travel to church, as well as by the way you worship there, by the way you treat your neighbors, by the way you use your time. Enoch and Noah showed us, through the examples of their lives, we cannot separate the holy from the secular. It is all one and the same. Our walk with God is reflected by everything we do, in every word we speak. The first 11 chapters of Genesis, the book of beginnings, cover the events of approximately 2,000 years. The story of Abraham, our next example of faith in action, reveals the way God gives each of His children the gift of faith, as we read in Ephesians 2, verses 8 through 9, and pursues personal intimacy with Him. A closer look at how God enabled this man of faith to make difficult choices will give us hope as we continue on the journeys God has marked out for each of us. And oh, Father, thank You for the stories of Enoch and Noah. May we be in awe of Your faithfulness to them in the middle of such difficult obedience. You called them to very hard, seemingly impossible tasks, each one carrying a high price tag. May we respond with glad obedience in response to Your amazing grace and love. Amen. What a gift it is for me to join you for these few minutes as we dig deeper into the lives of those in Hebrews chapter 11, people who, though dead, still speak and are helping show us the way to walk by obedience. Friends, thanks so much for joining us for the Daily Treasure podcast, and it is our prayer that you will help us encourage others to experience the help and hope of Jesus by sharing this podcast with your friends. You can also leave a review or leave a rating that helps others find us. Thank you for those of you who've done that, and I encourage others to do the same. We also want to encourage you to dig a little deeper into some of our resources, and one of them is called Help and Hope. Our Help and Hope podcast is typically stories of people who have experienced life crises that are calling back to us about how God has met them in the darkness. And I think today's topic is really relevant. It's called I Forgive You, and my guest is Wendy Alsup. I think that many people have experienced betrayal. Maybe you are one of those people. Someone has violated your trust, maybe by lying, cheating, some kind of abuse, putting their own interest ahead of yours when they promise to do otherwise. Betrayal affects every part of our hearts, often in ways we don't understand at first. Some hurts we carry with us to the day we die. They are so deep and seem impossible to resolve. And that's why I appreciate Wendy Alsup's thoughts on this topic that she shares in her book, I Forgive You, but especially in this conversation. She shares the impact of betrayal from her own life, not only through an unwanted divorce, but also in her church life. But the thing about Wendy is that she doesn't leave us in the mud of betrayal. Instead, she speaks frankly about the power of forgiveness. And Wendy's view of forgiveness is not stereotypical. She pulls examples from her own life. She talks about the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation, and how understanding ambiguous loss can help us as we grieve the losses of betrayal. Friend, whether you are still gasping for air as the impact of betrayal hits you hard, or you are carrying the wounds of broken relationships from years ago, I know this conversation will help guide you through the minefields of grief and loss. Go to helpandhopenow.org and click the Help and Hope link and look for my conversation with Wendy Alsop called I Forgive You. You can also listen to this conversation on the Help and Hope app. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Sharon Betters, and I look forward to being with you tomorrow.